Hello, dear friends in the Holliston community. Welcome back to another episode of the Garden in the Kitchen cooking show. I am your host, Silvia Dunnirvine, self-taught chef, food blogger, recipe developer at gardeninthekitchen.com.
Hi Sylvia, I'm Anne Buckley. I'm Sylvia's chief taster and happy to be here.
Good, I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
I love cooking beside you. Sometimes when I'm cooking on my own, I just pretend Anne is there.
Chatting along in the background, waiting
nice
to taste.
To cook in company, isn't it?
It is, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
It makes everything easier, doesn't it?
Yes, and so I'm glad you're here, and I'm also very glad that you're here to share this recipe, because this recipe is very, very special to me personally and to my business, because this recipe is one of the reasons why my website has reached 500,000 page views this month of November.
Wow.
That we are filming, the month we are filming November. So
that's incredible.
I'm very excited.
Wow, that's really amazing, Sylvia. Well done.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that. People, I think everybody loves chili. I don't think I have ever heard one person say they don't like chili. And
No.
I spent a lot of time developing this recipe because while chili is an easy recipe to make, it's hard to reach good flavor and texture and all of the things. So anyway, the recipe is here, and I'm so glad and excited to be sharing with everyone. And I also must mention that I have a venison chili recipe on our website.
Okay.
And a slow cooker turkey chili. So lots of chili options.
Lots of options for the
everyone.
winter season.
Yes,
Perfect.
exactly. So shall we get started?
Yeah, tell me about these ingredients. I'm already honing straight in on those spices, because the spices are the hardest thing to get right with a chili, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And I have to say, the pre-packed chili spices you see it on the grocery, they do a really good job too. I have used those. So if you don't carry a whole selection of spices in your home, and if you want to just grab one of those packets, that's totally fine too.
Good.
There is plenty of flavor there. But I like to use my own spices, my own mix. And here we're looking at some garlic powder and the chili powder seasoning, some smoked paprika. They have different types of paprika, like sweet paprika. I like to use the smoked paprika for this, and the cumin, coriander, salt and pepper over there. And if you have any like smoked seasoning at home, you can add to it. It's, those smoked flavors go really well with the chili. So
perfect. We
have our spices here.
Okay.
And our ground beef, 1 pound, and 3 cans of beans. So I'm mixing black beans, kidney beans, pinto beans, rinsed. So 3 cans, they're all in here. 28 ounces of crushed tomatoes. You can do chunky tomatoes. You can do just tomato sauce. Just 28 ounce can. And I like to use salsa, like the chips and salsa. I like to use it. It adds a lot of flavor. It adds a little bite to it. And this is a medium one. You could use hot or mild, depending on your choice.
Palate.
Yes, exactly. Some 1 cup of beef broth, onions, garlic. We have some all-purpose flour to thicken the chili a little bit. You could use gluten-free flour, totally fine. And oil, and finally some green chilies.
Ooh, okay.
Yes. So shall we get started?
And we're doing this one in the Instant Pot,
Yes,
Sylvia.
we are doing, making this recipe in an Instant Pot. However, if you don't have one or don't want to use it, you can totally make this recipe on a big pot. Like I like to use a heavy-duty cast iron, like a Dutch oven. It distributes the heat really good, and it doesn't like burn one side, and so it's just a perfect type of pot to cook on stovetop. And you don't have to worry about cooking time so much, because once you brown the beef, everything is already cooked, right? So we're just really spending time cooking to incorporate the flavors, to thicken the sauce. Just so I would say, like, 30 minutes. Once everything's
Once
together,
everything is in, just to
cover, simmer for 30 minutes, and you should be fine.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yes, and also this recipe freezes really well. So if you want to make a double batch, or if you just have leftovers, you can just pop it in the freezer and have it ready for like a cold, snowy day.
Yes, perfect.
Yes.
I love that.
So
Okay.
shall we get started?
Let's get started.
We're
yes.
doing with, like you asked, we're using the Instant Pot today. So all we have to do is turn on saute mode. So we're gonna start by sauteing the beef and then the onions and the garlic and adding in the seasoning.
Okay.
So I have my Instant Pot on saute mode. And what I'm gonna do right away is add the oil. This is just about 1 to 2 tablespoons of olive oil right here. And 1 pound of beef. I like to let my meat, ground beef, sorry. I like to let my meat sit out for a little bit, just so it's not like really cold from the fridge going into the pot. Sometimes that makes it stick into the pot.
Okay. I've often wondered what the benefit of that is, because a lot of recipes tell you to let the meat rest at room temperature first. That's really interesting to know that that's the downside of not being able to do that.
Yeah, this is true for this case here, where it would stick to the bottom of the pan.
Okay.
Another reason why, if you hear that with steak, it's because, you know, meat is like a muscle, and you don't want to go from cold to really hot. It would tighten and lose moisture. So you want to let it sit out and the meat to relax before going into the heat. So that's another reason. So I'm going to put this guy in 1 pound, and it's, you know, usually the pot starts out a little slow, so it's going to take a minute to warm up, which I can feel warming up right now. So it's going to take some time, and what we're going to do while this is
that's
going
working
on.
away.
Yeah, we are going to chop some onions and garlic.
Perfect.
Before I'm breaking this meat up so it cooks faster. So the idea here is to brown the beef, the meat. So I've broken up into like small pieces here instead of one block.
Yes.
Right? So it cooks, and I'm just gonna let it sit here because it's still warming up, and the oil and all. And I'm gonna chop the onion here. So I have 1 whole onion. Usually that's just enough for a recipe this size. White onion. And
so you're cutting that into quarters and then taking the skin off. Does that help with the release of what makes you cry? Because
no,
whenever
I wish it did.
Right, whenever I cut onions, I'm literally streaming.
Yes.
And I usually peel the whole thing first, and then I try to keep the root end on, because that's how I was taught at school, that if you kept the root end on, then that didn't release the vapors that made you cry so much.
Interesting.
But nothing works.
I haven't figured out a tip that would prevent from crying when you're cutting your onions. This is just easy to remove the top.
To remove the top layer.
So that's why I slice it in quarters. And
I've also heard that if you put a silver spoon in your mouth,
is that right?
Then that helps. But
that's so interesting.
Nothing
Have you tried
helps
it?
me. Nothing.
No. That's unfortunate. I haven't found anything that works either. So right now we're just chopping our onions and small. Okay, we're gonna go over these guys in a minute. Just chop it roughly. Be careful with your finger there.
Yep.
This is a very sharp knife, and it's actually safer to use a sharp knife as opposed to a dull knife, because when you're using a sharp knife, you shouldn't be putting a ton of effort in, right? It should just glide and slice the food, as opposed to like a dull knife. You would have to be more forceful, and therefore like wiggle the knife in the wrong direction and perhaps cutting your finger. So keep your knives sharp. All right, so let's give this onion a rough chop here. As you can hear, the beef is going.
I can, yes.
Browning.
It's taking off now.
It's taking off.
Now, I know people who are still shy with their Instant Pots.
Yes.
Like, I hope that this is another one of those recipes that really makes them understand how straightforward it is to use.
Yes, I very much hope so, because I do get a lot of questions about how to use the Instant Pot in different types of questions, but basically they're having a hard time. They're struggling how to make the Instant Pot work for them. And I would say, first of all, don't be afraid, because this machine is really safe. It's not going to do anything like it's going to explode or any such a things, right? I mean, the worst thing you could do is burn your food, and I mean, that's unfortunate, but
trial and error if you have to.
Yeah, so just play around with your machine, I would say. Now, having said that, I would like to address a question that I have had about this recipe in the past, where people would come to me and say, oh, I'm getting the burn notice. Yeah. And you know what it does is the machine says that burn. Oh, okay. Yeah, burn. So it's burning something. And then
what do you do?
What do you do, right? So the trick is not to let your food dry out in the pot, because it's going to stick to the bottom. Yeah. And eventually give you the burn notice. So so just keep moving. And if you notice that something's drying out, and let's say the broth step is not until like 5 steps ahead, add the broth. Just add the broth, okay? Just be more intuitive about your cooking, right? Just
just be more flexible with it. You don't have to follow it absolute if it's not working for you and your machine.
Yeah. Generally, you got your instructions, but you know, every person is different. So just be a little bit intuitive, and at times, if you have to make your own decisions about what you add next and what could be going wrong here. So that's what I would say. I'm going to add my onions right now, because as you can see, you can take a peek.
Let me have a peek.
It's all like brown.
Oh, it is. It's perfectly browned. Yeah.
So we're going to let that continue to saute, which is fine. And I'll add the onions now.
And you keep all of that oil in there. So you added oil to begin with, and then any natural oils that have come from the beef, you keep in the pot.
I do, because once we add the dry spices, that's going to soak it up and taking care of all of that moisture. So you don't want to remove that moisture. It's going to be helpful to you. I'm going to add my garlic right now.
And that applies if you're on the stove top as well as the Instant Pot. You wouldn't drain at that point.
So some people, I don't. To answer your question, I don't. Some people like to drain, and that's understandably, you know, some of the fat juices is in there, but a lot, which is fine, but a lot of it is like adds flavor and moisture to it. So that's the reason why I don't. And like, again, every recipe is different, but for this one, I know for a fact that the dry spices will soak up all of these juices, and so I don't want to remove it.
And if you're buying a decent cut of the beef as well, then you know you're not going to have too much excess fat.
Correct. So the onions went in, and now we are adding some garlic. And then we're going to immediately start to add our spices. And what we're doing here is just building flavor. Right? So early on, we're building in all of these layers of flavor, and that's what's going to make our chili awesome.
Fantastic.
Okay, here goes the garlic.
This is my favorite part, when the color all starts to come through.
Yeah. Okay, so let me give this a good stir.
How's the edge of that pot there, Sylvia? Because your finger is just resting straight on it.
Actually, the top part here, it's not hot right now. It will be once you remove the top. like from the pressure,
Yep.
it will be really hot.
Yes.
So, but then again, my little fingers are not too sensitive anymore about heat. So just be careful. Okay, that's going really good. And now I'm going to add salt and pepper to taste. So you can add more or less depending on how you like it.
Yep.
And all of our beautiful spices here. Just gonna add that right in.
And the quantities are all in the recipe on the website.
Yes, it is. Wow, that's looking really, really good. So again, give this all a stir. And I wanted to take a peek because you're gonna see that the moisture is absorbing.
It really is.
Right?
Yeah.
So all of that excess moisture it's gone.
It smells
it's gone.
delicious.
And in fact, if you leave it alone for too long, it will stick to the bottom of the pot and give you a burn notice. So all the liquid is gone, the flavors are in.
I feel quite good about myself. I've never had the burn signal come up. That was new to me.
Actually, I have to say, I have never ever once got a burn notice.
Okay.
Which is nice, but at the same time frustrating when one of your readers get the burn notice and you're like, ah,
how can I help?
How can I help?
Yes.
So, all right, in goes, I believe 3 tablespoons of tomato paste.
Okay.
So, again, we're building on flavor and color. Stirring this in. You notice I like to stir after each batch of ingredients. I like to give it a stir. And finally, at this point, is the flour. So I have 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. And like I've mentioned, if you're gluten-free, you can use gluten-free flour. That's fine too. So this is definitely gonna dry out everything that's in here.
Yes.
Right? And so we got that 1 cup of beef broth ready to go.
Yeah.
Right? And this will help thicken the sauce a little bit. It's not gonna be super thick, just like slightly perfectly done. So no moisture left here in. Take a peek. There's no moisture left.
Big difference.
Right?
Yeah.
We got this beautiful brown beef ready to go. And I'm gonna add my broth so it doesn't stick to the bottom of my pot. Okay, now there's liquid in there. Everything's settling in really nicely. And then I'm going to add the rest of our ingredients. So we have 3 cans of beans, black beans, kidney, and pinto. These are rinsed and going in. We also have our salsa going in. The whole can.
The whole jar. Wow.
The whole,
okay.
Yeah, whole thing.
That's new to me. I'm intrigued.
Green chilies.
The whole can again.
Whole can, yeah. So the good thing about this recipe too, I mean, there's many good things about this recipe, but one of them is that it does use a lot of canned goods. And what this means is an easier recipe to make, and it's budget friendly.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's really great. If it's a good recipe to do whenever you have a lot of people, or if you have to bring a recipe to a friend's house or gift to someone who's ill or something, this is a great one. So everything's in, looking pretty good.
Smells delicious.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? So I like to rinse my can of tomatoes with a little bit of water, but not throw it away. I like to add this little bit of extra liquid with the leftover tomatoes into the pot.
I do exactly the same. I feel very professional now.
That's wonderful. It's intuitive, like I was saying. Okay, so everything's in. I'm just going to give it a good stir, make sure everything's well combined here. And now I'm going to make sure all of the ingredients went in.
Yep, everything's gone in.
Everything's in.
Good,
I'm going to cancel the saute mode. Now we're going to cover our Instant Pot. Here the sound means it's locked, the lid. Now we're going to lock the vent, push it down, lock position, and we're going to cook on high pressure for 15 minutes.
So just looking at from back here, Silvia, you're pushing manual and you're setting the timer by using the minus button down to 15.
Yes.
So I noticed that on your pot, you've actually got a chili setting. You don't use that.
I don't use a chili setting.
You prefer
I like to use my own timing. I actually don't know how long the chili setting is as far as timing. In most people, it will use just the pressure for whatever they're doing. You know, so I got 15 minutes going on. I press on manual and I select my time up or down depending on what you had here before, and it will turn on automatically. Yes. And what's going to happen is you won't see, you're not seeing there, but it will stay on until it builds pressure inside of the pot. Yes. Then it will start to count down the time from the time you set, 15 here, count down until 0. That's when the recipe is done. So it's going to take a little time to build pressure inside of the pot. Then we'll count down 15 to 0. And I believe for this recipe, I have natural pressure release. So it would say in the recipe, but allow for 10 minutes of NPR, which stands for natural pressure release, and then after the 10 minutes, whatever pressure is left, you just release by twisting the knob, and that's it, and your recipe is done. But those directions are all on the website. Yeah, no need to try and remember all of that information. I had to peek.
I think one thing that the step that I would often skip when I started with my Instant Pot was the building up of pressure. So I wouldn't allow the extra, say, 10 minutes or so for it to get to pressure. So in my head, it wasn't as fast as I was hoping for it to be. So just for the viewers that are new to the Instant Pot, just factor that in and just make sure that there is a little bit extra leeway in if you're prepping rice or something to serve at the same time.
Absolutely. That's a very good point, because if you are new to the pot, once you set your time, you may not know what's going on here. Like the time's not on. Where's the 15 minutes? Where's the time?
Where's the countdown?
Where's the countdown? Exactly. So just understand that once you lock this lid, it's going to take a few minutes to reach pressure, and then it will start to count down.
Perfect.
Yes. So as this is cooking, we'll take a quick break and we'll be back to try our amazing beef chili. Welcome back. Our chili is ready. If you are just starting to watch, I made an Instant Pot chili. We cooked for 15 minutes and we allowed about 10 minutes of natural pressure to be released, and the recipe instruction says to release remaining pressure after the 10 minutes, and when I did that, there was actually no pressure left in the pot. So now we're gonna open this up.
Okay, let's see.
And check it out. Okay, make sure your face is away from the pot because of all of the steam. Let me just put this cover over here for now, and...
How does it look?
It looks really good. Have a look.
Oh,
see how it's like thick a little bit from the flour, and what we did is, but it's not super thick. It's really good. Yeah. It smells really good. So
it does smell good.
Let me serve up some. I've seen some people add chickpeas.
Okay.
And that's such a great addition too, because if you think about it, it's also like a type of canned legumes. And it's all cooked. If you use the canned chickpeas too, or you can use a different variety of beans. I've used white beans in the past. Yeah. That's also a good option. But generally 3 cans of beans is what I recommend. So I'm going to add just a little pinch of fresh cilantro here. Some people like to serve it with sour cream or
Yeah.
yogurt. That's another option.
Okay.
I like to eat my chili with cornbread.
Okay.
So,
Shall we try?
shall we try it?
Looks delicious.
Here's
Thank
a
you.
spoon. Okay, be careful, it's a little hot.
Okay, I'm going to try the chili first. Oh, that's really good.
That's good.
That's very good. And it is, I can taste the salsa in there. It is,
Yes.
yeah. It is a slightly different flavour to
Yes.
a previous chili that I've had.
Okay.
It's delicious.
Thank you. I'm so glad. I'm just so happy to hear.
Yes.
I personally love this recipe.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you do
And
too.
so do your followers, obviously. Yes.
Exactly. Yes.
Great.
And I'm just happy to share with all of you, our dear friends in our sweet community of Holliston. And I hope you try this recipe. Do you have any wine
And
recommendation for
Yes.
such a...
So any red, I would go with any red
red.
for this. So again, I've got a Dove Hunt Dog, and this is the Cabernet Sauvignon. It's light enough so that it doesn't take away from the flavours of the
Okay.
chili, and a really good fruity
That
flavour.
sounds really lovely.
Yes.
Thank you
So
for sharing
cheers.
that.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Cheers, and thank you everyone for watching another episode. I hope you have an amazing 2023 as we are into
believe
the
it.
new year. And I hope you enjoyed this recipe as well. It will certainly keep you warm and nourished during the cold months in New England. Thank you.